The Road to Recovery podcast, an SNJ Today presentation. Watch each week's TV program at snjtoday.com.
After nearly 8 years of drug addiction, Michael De Leon spent 12 years in prison and halfway houses for a gang-related homicide. Since his time in prison, he's dedicated his life to making the world a better place. He is the founder of Steered Straight, which guides young people away from the dangers of drugs and criminal activity. As a motivational speaker, he has spent thousands of hours talking to millions of young adults, and he has worked tirelessly to help people suffering find the road to recovery.
Welcome to The Road to Recovery. I'm Michael De Leon, your host. And today's guest, Gordon Gannon from C3 Foundation, drove a couple hours to spend some time with us because I felt that this was so important to discuss. I'm learning more about it, and it goes against a little bit of my, treatment and therapy and counseling ideation. But I'm very curious about how this works. And basically, Gordon, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today.
Nice to be here, Michael.
The C3 Foundation is on a mission. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about the mission and then, what naltrexone, the drug that we're talking about, what it does and actually how it addresses alcoholism.
C3 works with people that suffer from alcohol use disorder. Alcoholics, alcohol abusers, the whole gamut. And we offer free advice, free counseling, and free kind of direction in terms of how do you go about employing the Sinclair method. The Sinclair method is the basis for everything that we do. The foundation's founder, Claudia Christian, came upon the work of David Sinclair a few years ago, and she had tried everything. She had tried everything from acupuncture to
quit drinking.
To quit drinking, okay. Yes. And she found out through the work of David Sinclair that the drug naltrexone, when combined with drinking an hour later, will over time reduce your dependency on alcohol. Alcoholism is a learned behavior. So nobody was born craving alcohol. It's something that over time your body came to adjust to, came to crave. And the reason being is that there are 7 trillion receptors in your brain. Those receptors can grow stronger through pleasurable activities. So everything from chocolate to gambling to alcohol, when you do those activities, they produce endorphins. Endorphins go to the receptors, and the more endorphins that go to the receptors, the stronger they become. So the alcoholism is a learned behavior. What happens with naltrexone is that if you take it an hour before you drink, the effects of the anti-opioid, that drug will sit on top of the receptor, and it will block the endorphins that are released from that pleasurable activity. So the more endorphins that are released that are blocked, the receptors become weaker and weaker and weaker. So your desire for that drink or the second or the fifth or 10th goes down over time. And Claudia herself has gone from basically dependent on alcohol to where she has a very normal life, and if she would like to have a social drink, she has a social drink. Some people want the goal of abstinence. That's the gold standard. We fully support that. Some people say, I don't want to quit drinking 100%. I'd like to be able to go to a party. I don't want to have to avoid going into a bar to watch a football game and have a beer and a burger on a Sunday afternoon. And so they basically figure out where the level of consumption is going to be safe and effective for them. But it does reduce, if not cure, and we don't use the word cure lightly. So
the Sinclair method and naltrexone, which is part of the Sinclair method,
absolutely,
in combination with drinking,
yes,
over time will
yes,
reduce the cravings,
yes,
and the strength of the neurotransmitters.
Exactly.
Very interesting. We want to talk more about this and learn more about this with Gordon Gannon right after this. Welcome back to The Road to Recovery. The Sinclair method, here we're discussing that with naltrexone with Gordon Gannon from C3 Foundation. I met you a couple months ago, and I was really so intrigued that I wanted to do a TV show, about this. So that's why I asked you to come down. I appreciate you driving hours and hours to get here.
My pleasure.
So where did it come from? How did David Sinclair come up with this?
Well, naltrexone had been in the marketplace. It had been received approval from the FDA in 1994, and so it was approved for opioids and cravings and things like that, and he simply was inspired by the work of Pavlov's dog, and he basically went to Finland and figured out that if you have a concentration of this drug, this chemical, in your system. And you basically feed the endorphin production. When you block it, these receptors become weaker and weaker over time. And just like you learned to drink, you learned this dependence, this will pharmacologically extinguish the dependence, and it will go away over time.
So the Finnish government invited him over to Finland to really put this theory into play.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening?
Well, in Finland, they've released the research, and there have been 90 clinical studies since. But in Finland, they put it into the public health system, and they've cured over 70,000 people
from alcoholism.
From alcoholism.
You know, right now we're in the middle of the worst public social health crisis our country's ever seen. In New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, and in all 50 states. The number one cause of accidental death is a drug overdose. So this is a real problem, but alcohol is a much bigger problem.
Alcohol is a huge problem. It affects over 200 million people, adults annually. So it's.
I mean, I think we've taken our eye off alcohol. I think we're socially accepting the drug that's killing more people than all other drugs. Taking nicotine off the table, that kills more people than anything, right. Period. Tobacco and nicotine. But alcohol, as far as a drug goes, and I'm not saying it's a drug for everyone, it's a drug for me. I can't drink alcohol.
Right.
So, but I think we've taken our eye off of the problem with alcohol and alcoholism. According to the CDC, I recently read that 1 out of 8 Americans are alcoholics.
Yep.
So if that's the case, this is a huge problem.
Well, so, even on top of that, there are almost 3.3 million deaths annually related to alcohol.
Wow.
Everything from drinking and driving to cirrhosis of the liver, et cetera, et cetera. So it's on many different levels, it can be addressed.
So the Sinclair method and naltrexone, which naltrexone is part of the Sinclair method.
It is a fundamental
This
part.
is kind of outside the box, and it's really contradictory to the treatment model that
Yes.
people need to go to get therapy and treatment and counseling for their alcoholism.
Yes.
So has that been the biggest hindrance and roadblock to understanding its success?
It's fundamentally economics. Naltrexone nowadays costs about 75 cents per tablet. It's generic. It's been out on the marketplace forever. We're working to have it be without a prescription. Right now, you have to go to your doctor. You have to, and if your doctor won't prescribe it, there are telemedicine providers that you can do as long as they're registered in the state. You should see a doctor before you go on this.
Can naltrexone harm you? Overdose on naltrexone?
No, it will not harm you. It is not toxic. If you take it in super high amounts, you might have some liver toxicity. But the reality is, if you take it, you should take it only the days that you drink. So if you're not going to drink, you don't take it. There's no reason to take it. So as your drinking decreases, your consumption of naltrexone decreases also.
Seems kind of silly that naltrexone is prescribed only, right?
Yes, but we're working towards that goal of it being over the counter.
Another incentive of the pharmaceutical industry that's really hindering and roadblocking.
There's no money in a generic drug, which is why nobody's going to get behind it. Furthermore, there's an entire $38 billion treatment industry, which depends on repeat customers. So I recently was involved with a relative who went away for 30 days, and it cost him $13,000. The next plan up, dealing with co-occurring disorders and things like that, was about $60,000. And the success rate and they're all based on the 12-step program. We have no problem with the social aspect of AA and the programs that are based around getting at the root causes. However, they have a 5 to 10% effective rate. Now, the use of the Sinclair method has about an 80% effective rate. And
on over 90 clinical studies.
Yep.
I think it's something to look at, something to really learn more about, and we need to talk more about this. We'll be back with Gordon right after this. Back on the road to recovery with Gordon Gannon, C3 Foundation. We're talking about the Sinclair method. David Sinclair developed this method, coined the Sinclair method with the drug naltrexone. Yes. Now, I don't want to get off topic, but I mean, a lot of people think naltrexone, isn't that for heroin? And so we don't want to really...
It falls into the classification of anti-opioid, okay? But understand that Sinclair's research focused on alcohol.
Right.
His specialty was alcoholic research.
And the 90 clinical studies and the data that we've amassed is addressing alcohol and alcoholism. So, but I wanted to mention that because a lot of people think naltrexone, isn't that the drug for heroin?
Right.
And it's been turned into other things with Vivitrol and
Yes.
things of that nature, and there's problems, right, with it? I mean,
well, the problem with Vivitrol is, well, number one, from a cost perspective, 75 cents versus a day versus $1,000 a month. It immediately makes it unaffordable for many folks that really, really do need it.
is naltrexone covered by insurance? If you were to...
There might be drug plans that it would fit into, but so the answer is yes.
Okay.
I think the thing to distinguish with Vivitrol is that you would have this anti-opioid in your body all the time. So it's going to block all of the endorphins. So there are endorphins that you want to have. Exercise. You don't want to have naltrexone or Vivitrol blocking those types of endorphins because they do produce pleasure. They do produce things that you want.
And then how are you supposed to enjoy a life of recovery with your endorphins blocked?
Exactly.
So long-term use of any drug is not the answer if you want a fulfilling life.
Exactly.
As fulfilling as it could be if you had the endorphins, affecting you, right?
Yes.
But naltrexone is not going to be in the body all the time.
No. In fact, what we do, what the Sinclair method does, is it recommends that you take it an hour before you drink, only on the days that you do drink. So you're only going to have this drug in your body. It has a half-life of 10 hours.
So to the layman that's really, heard and lived and, looked at the 12-step models that you want to quit drinking. If you have a problem, quit drinking, right? But with this method, you're not going to quit drinking because it's not going to work if you abstain completely. So you want to tell people to keep drinking while they're using this naltrexone.
For naltrexone to work, okay, with alcohol use disorder, you have to drink. There's no way around it. If you use naltrexone and don't drink and you abstain, it will be the exact same effect of taking a placebo.
So you took it, right?
I have taken it, yes.
You have personal experience with this. So what happened with your situation?
For me, I'm not an alcoholic, but I said I would love to cut down on the amount that I do drink, and I started taking it 2 days before a family wedding because I knew what was going on, and it affected me almost immediately. And my consumption of alcohol personally has gone down 80% since, I'm not drinking at all right now.
Because of this. So
Absolutely.
When you took the naltrexone 2 days before the wedding, you went to the wedding, you drank.
I had 1 beer, a half a glass of wine.
Do you think you would have drank more if you didn't take the naltrexone?
I guarantee you I would have.
So your drinking has subsided 80% based on your personal...
Within days. Based
on your personal use with this
yes.
Sinclair method and the use of naltrexone.
Yes.
So how did you get it? You went to a doctor and got a prescription?
Yes, actually, my own doctor turned me down.
Really?
Yeah, he said, "This is not my business. I don't know anything about this." I offered him the research, and there's a resistance by the medical community because they don't understand it. It's counterintuitive to many of these folks that have been ingrained about on the 12-step program.
Right. I mean, it's counterintuitive to me
Yeah.
when I first talked to you about it.
Yeah, and so I went to a telemedicine provider that was registered in the state of New Jersey, and within 2 hours I had a prescription, and I think it's one of the greatest things that I've ever done.
So who should take this? Like, who would you recommend to try this Sinclair method?
I say anybody that believes that they have an alcohol problem, period. Whether or not you are drinking a bottle of vodka a day, or whether or not you'd like to go from a six-pack a night to I don't really need that.
Which was your case. You didn't really have a problem, but
No.
you wanted to quit drinking as much.
Yeah, I wanted to cut back. I didn't want to walk away from things that are in my social network, and nor should you. I mean, there's alcohol, for better or for worse, is a part of our society. The question is, how do we manage it, especially when it becomes problematic? And the Sinclair method, not only does it work, it has a high effective rate, so 80% versus basically the 5 to 10% that you find in the 12-step programs. And I remember with the relative that went into the treatment center, he said, I researched the treatment centers up and down, and I wanted to know what's the likelihood that I'm going to walk away without this problem. And nobody could give an answer because they don't really have an
Right,
answer.
which, that's the same thing with 12-step. How do you know it's only 5 to 10% success rate? I guess we don't really know, but the success rate for addiction, with all my years of experience, is very low. So I think it's important to look at. We'll talk more with Gordon Gannon right after this. Welcome back, The Road to Recovery. Gordon Gannon, the C3 Foundation, and your mission is really to share the Sinclair method with people who feel that they have a problem with alcoholism.
Right.
Consumption of alcohol.
Right. We offer free counseling, not counseling in terms of what are the root causes of your alcohol use disorder, but if you're interested in the Sinclair method, how do you go about doing it? How do you get a prescription for naltrexone? Do you need therapy? What happens if I drink twice a day instead of once a day?
Right.
All the different ways that you need to incorporate into your life so that this methodology is effective for you.
So maybe if people don't want to do 12 steps, or they've gone to treatment and they're still drinking and it hasn't worked, if you will, this is something that they might try. Or maybe somebody that just feels they have a problem with alcohol, this is something that they should try. Right?
Well, there are a lot of people that have the kind of philosophy that we've seen is that, well, the person hasn't really hit rock bottom yet. So what they need to do is they need to lose their wife, they need to lose their job, they need to lose their house, their car, their kids, everything that they've worked for or have garnered in life. And then they can start the road to recovery. That goes against everything that, from an ethical standpoint, that modern medicine has espoused. Do no harm. So naltrexone is a form of starting off at the top, where before you've gone through all these trials and tribulations, and will allow you to, in the privacy of your own home, without any judgment socially, and with a very high effective rate, help you to deal with incorporating this into your life before you put all those things at risk.
Huh. And so how do people learn more about this?
Well, I think the best way and the quickest way is there's a movie out, there's a documentary that our founder, Claudia Christian, produced and narrated and starred in, called One Little Pill. It's a fascinating 45 to 50 minute piece that will take you through everything. And it talks with people that have sat down and said, okay, this is my first day on the program. all the way in talking to David Sinclair himself, talks to a judge, law enforcement personnel, and how this is an important development in the treatment of alcohol use disorder. We've got a great website, www.c3foundation.org. There are articles out there that will that are online. There's a book published by Dr. Roy Escapa that is called, and we again don't use this word lightly, The Cure for Alcoholism. And it goes into the entire, all the science behind it. This is scientifically proven. There are over 90 clinical studies done. This is not anecdotal. It's not, and unlike the 12-step program where you're saying, well, if it doesn't work, it's a problem with you. And it's a problem with the relationship that you have with the higher power. I'm all about the higher power, believe me. I'm a very religious guy. But you can have a great relationship with God and still struggle mightily with alcohol use disorder.
I see it every day.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. It was definitely counterintuitive to what I was thinking about treating alcoholism. Not saying that treatment doesn't work or shouldn't be an option. 12-step shouldn't be an option. I have people who have, changed their life with it, but this is something that people should look at. Okay. So Gordon, thanks so much for joining us. C3foundation.org, David Sinclair Method. You can learn about the book and the documentary on the website.
Great.
Thanks so much for joining us. On the road to recovery, I'm Michael De Leon. We'll see you on the next episode.